Most Harry Potter fan theories sound clever until you check the books and realize they fall apart quicker than Professor Snape when he hears the name Lily. But a small number did the opposite. They sounded ridiculous at first, were argued about for years, and then quietly turned out to be completely true. Like the fact that Hogwarts is free to attend. Hogwarts does not charge tuition. Magical education in Britain is fully funded by the Ministry of Magic, which quietly removes the most obvious logistical question in the entire series. How thousands of families afford 7 years at a castle with moving staircases and a dragon problem. This was later confirmed by J.K. Rowling outside the books. Students still pay for supplies like wands, robes, books, and cauldrons, but the school itself costs nothing to attend. This explains how Muggle-born students with no wizarding wealth can enter the system without the entire setup collapsing immediately. It also reframes inequality in the wizarding world. Education is not the barrier. Everything else is. Now, why they even need money in a society where you can just magic things out of thin air is another question altogether. Wizards naturally live much longer than Muggles. Witches and wizards have a significantly extended natural lifespan, commonly exceeding a century, and capable of reaching around 200 years. This was confirmed by Rowling, and reframes how old age works in the series. Dumbledore, who appears ancient, dies at roughly 150 years old, meaning he was not nearing the end of his natural life at all. He was murdered early. This also makes Voldemort's obsession with immortality look even more self-defeating. Had he avoided soul-splitting, murder, and cursed artifacts, he could have lived for many more decades without doing anything at all. Instead, he chose the most dangerous method possible to extend a life that was already unusually long. If I didn't know any better, I'd think Rowling just randomly makes up new facts about the wizarding world without considering previously established lore. Dudley's Dementor attack forces self-recognition. Dementors do not simply induce fear. They force victims to relive their worst moments and confront their inner selves. Rowling later clarified that Dudley Dursley did not relive trauma in the traditional sense because he had lived a protected, indulgent life. Instead, the Dementor forced him to see himself exactly as he was: cruel, selfish, and hollow. For someone whose identity was built entirely on being indulged and admired, this was psychologically devastating. This moment explains Dudley's subtle behavioral shift later in the story, including his awkward concern for Harry before leaving Privet Drive. It wasn't character growth. This is J.K. Rowling, after all. It was the magic ghosts that made Dudley act like a human for once in his life. Hermione smelled Ron in Amortentia. Amortentia is described as the most powerful love potion in existence, identifiable by its pearlescent sheen and the fact that it smells different to every person, reflecting what attracts them most. In Half-Blood Prince, Hermione smells freshly cut grass and new parchment, then stops short before naming the third scent. This omission led to years of speculation, until Rowling later confirmed that the final smell was Ron Weasley. The reason it is left unstated in the text is not subtle mystery, but narrative damage control. Revealing it explicitly would have undercut the slow burn tension of their relationship arc. In other words, the silence is doing structural work, not hiding a twist. Now we just need someone to make a disheveled ginger-scented candle. Magic is genetic, but not inherited cleanly. Magical ability is tied to genetics, but not in a neat or predictable way. Rowling confirmed that there is a magical gene, which explains why magic often runs in families. However, the gene can appear spontaneously in Muggleborns and fail to manifest in Squibs, meaning inheritance is inconsistent at best. This neatly dismantles the ideology of blood purity without requiring the story to shout about it. Pure blood supremacy is not just morally wrong, it is scientifically incorrect within the rules of the world. Magic does not care about surnames, family trees, or who thinks they are superior. It occasionally skips generations, appears without warning, and ignores every rule bigots wish it followed. And here I thought a wizard's magic was measured by how many midichlorians they have. Voldemort used Quirrell as a temporary Horcrux. While Voldemort is widely known to have created 7 Horcruxes, later canon clarified that Professor Quirrell functioned as a temporary living vessel for a fragment of Voldemort's soul. This was not a formal Horcrux in the traditional sense, but the effect was similar. Voldemort's presence slowly corrupted Quirrell from the inside, while the squidgy little face on the back of Quirrell's head corrupted him from the outside, physically weakening him and accelerating his death. This explains Quirrell's rapid deterioration, and why Voldemort abandons him without hesitation once he becomes useless. It also establishes two key rules that become important later. 1. Housing a soul fragment inside a living person is unstable, destructive, and ultimately fatal. And 2. A small CGI face on the back of someone's head looks stupid. Wizards can fly without brooms. Flight is not inherently tied to broomsticks. Rowling later clarified that all witches and wizards possess the latent ability to fly, but almost all of them require a broom to channel and stabilize it. It's kind of like how Jedi can fight without lightsabers, but they use laser swords because they look freaking cool as hell. Brooms function like magical training wheels. Voldemort's ability to fly unaided in Deathly Hallows is not a new spell or dark invention. It is an advanced expression of raw magical control. This reframes broom-based flight as a cultural standard rather than a hard limitation. They are simply not skilled enough, disciplined enough, or reckless enough to try. King's Cross was a real magical limbo. After being struck by Voldemort's killing curse in the Forbidden Forest, Harry awakens in a bright, empty version of King's Cross Station. Dumbledore explains that the experience is happening inside Harry's mind, then immediately undercuts that explanation by asking why that would mean it is not real. Canon supports both interpretations simultaneously. This space functions as a genuine liminal state where souls, knowledge, and choices exist outside normal life and death. The broken, suffering creature Harry sees beneath the bench is confirmed to be the mutilated fragment of Voldemort's soul that had been living inside him, and not a creepy-looking Voldemort-shaped fetus, as most fans speculated. The location is not symbolic set dressing. It is a functioning in-between space, where the Horcrux is destroyed, and Harry is given a genuine choice to move on or return. Basilisk venom made Horcrux destruction possible. The encounter in the Chamber of Secrets quietly establishes the most important mechanical rule of the entire series. Basilisk venom is one of the few substances capable of permanently destroying a Horcrux. The other substance is, of course, good old Coca-Cola. Have you ever seen how fast it strips rust from metal? It's gnarly. When Harry kills the Basilisk and stabs Tom Riddle's diary with the sword of Gryffindor, the sword absorbs the venom, turning it into a reusable Horcrux-destroying weapon. This single event enables the destruction of multiple Horcruxes later, including Slytherin's locket. Ron and Hermione even return to the chamber to retrieve Basilisk fangs specifically for this purpose. The Basilisk does not destroy the Horcrux inside Harry, but it provides the only reliable method by which Horcruxes can be destroyed at all. Neville Longbottom could have been the chosen one. The prophecy describing the child who would have the power to defeat Lord Voldemort applies equally to Harry Potter and Neville Longbottom. Both were born at the end of July. Both had parents who defied Voldemort 3 times. Both lost their parents as a direct result of Voldemort's actions. What ultimately determined who became the chosen one was not fate, destiny, or prophecy mechanics, but Voldemort's own decision. That and Harry's name just sounds better in a book title. Would you want to read Neville Longbottom and the Goblet of Fire? Yeah, me neither. By choosing to attack Harry instead of Neville, Voldemort marked Harry as his equal and set the entire chain of events in motion. Neville's later actions reinforce this reading rather than undermine it. He leads resistance at Hogwarts, stands up to Voldemort publicly, and destroys Nagini, the final Horcrux. The prophecy did not crown a hero. Voldemort did. Harry and Voldemort are distantly related. Harry Potter and Voldemort share ancestry through the Peverell brothers, making them distant relatives. Harry descends from Ignotus Peverell, whose invisibility cloak passed down through the Potter family. Voldemort descends from Cadmus Peverell, through the Gaunt line, inheriting the Resurrection Stone disguised as a ring. This connection is explained directly by Dumbledore and is supported by grave inscriptions and family records. While the relationship is distant enough to have no emotional or social relevance, no
Harry, I am your father
here, it adds structural symmetry to the story. Both characters inherit legacies tied to the Deathly Hallows. One seeks to dominate death, the other learns how to accept it. Same bloodline, opposite conclusions. Harry becomes the true master of death. Uniting all 3 Deathly Hallows does not make Harry immortal, and the books are explicit about that. What it does make him is the philosophical master of death. Harry possesses the invisibility cloak, uses the Resurrection Stone, and becomes master of the Elder Wand without seeking it. More importantly, he willingly walks toward death with full knowledge of the outcome. Dumbledore explains that mastery of death does not mean avoiding it forever, but accepting it without fear. Harry survives not because he outwits death, but because he's the main character. Because he doesn't try to escape it. He can still die naturally, He just no longer panics about it, which in the wizarding world apparently counts as enlightenment. Trelawney was actually a genuine seer. Professor Trelawney's reputation as a fraud comes from her day-to-day behavior, not from her actual prophetic record. In canon, she delivers 2 full prophecies, and both come true exactly as stated. The first is the prophecy concerning the child with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord, overheard by Snape and passed on to Voldemort. The second occurs during Harry's divination exam, when she predicts that Voldemort will rise again, with the aid of his servant, which happens later that same night, when Pettigrew escapes and restores him. Outside of these trance states, her predictions are vague, melodramatic, and mostly useless. The pattern is consistent. When Trelawney is conscious, she guesses. When she's not, she's terrifyingly accurate. The joke is not that she's a fake. It is that she has no control over when she is real. Okay, say it with me. If I had a nickel for every time Trelawney had a prophecy come true, I'd have 2 nickels. Which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. Snape was functionally one of the story's true heroes. Severus Snape's actions drive the survival of nearly every major character, including Harry. After Lily Potter's death, Snape becomes Dumbledore's spy, feeding Voldemort false information while secretly protecting Harry for years. He intervenes repeatedly to save Harry's life, manages the impossible task of maintaining credibility on both sides of the war, and ultimately agrees to kill Dumbledore to preserve the larger plan. Oh, sure, Snape kills his boss and he's a hero. But when I talk about murdering my boss, I have to spend 2 hours begging HR to let me keep my job. Make it make sense. Snape's final act is giving Harry the memories that explain how Voldemort can be defeated. Canon does not present Snape as morally pure. Rowling explicitly describes him as gray. He is bitter, cruel, and emotionally stunted. He is also essential. Remove Snape from the timeline, and Voldemort wins, quickly and without drama. Dumbledore functioned as the personification of death. Dumbledore's role mirrors death from the tale of the 3 brothers with uncomfortable precision. He possesses the Elder Wand, briefly owns the Resurrection Stone, and safeguards the invisibility cloak before passing it on. More importantly, he never attempts to evade death once his mistakes catch up to him. When Harry dies in the Forbidden Forest, it is Dumbledore who greets him in the liminal King's Cross space, not as a judge or a ruler, but as a calm guide. Death, in the fairy tale, waits patiently for the 3rd brother and greets him like an old friend. Rowling never formally labeled Dumbledore as Death, but she's also never contradicted my personal fan theory that Harry is a cannibal, so do with that what you will. The Death Eaters were deliberately modeled on Nazi ideology. The Death Eaters' obsession with blood purity is not a vague metaphor or accidental parallel. Rowling later confirmed that the wizarding world's hierarchy of purebloods, half-bloods, and muggleborns was intentionally designed to mirror real-world racial ideologies, particularly Nazism. Voldemort's rhetoric, symbolism, and methods align closely with historical fascist movements. Obsession with lineage, scapegoating of minorities, rewriting history to justify dominance, and the belief that power equates to moral superiority. That and his little square mustache really give him away. Crucially, the ideology is internally hollow. Many so-called pureblood families are heavily interrelated due to limited numbers, and Voldemort himself is a half-blood. The system is not just evil, it is logically broken, which is the point. Dumbledore was always written as gay. Albus Dumbledore's sexuality is never stated directly in the books, but Rowling later confirmed that he was gay and that his romantic feelings for Gellert Grindelwald played a major role in his early moral failures. This context reframes Dumbledore's guilt, restraint, and long-term self-punishment. His reluctance to seek power, his refusal of political office, and his insistence on keeping emotional distance all stem from a youthful relationship that went catastrophically wrong. The confrontation does not change the plot mechanics, but it explains the emotional logic behind his decisions. Dumbledore is not just wise. He is someone who learned, painfully, what happens when brilliance is mixed with desire and no restraint. The trio symbolically mirrors the Deathly Hallows. Harry, Ron, and Hermione align symbolically with the 3 Deathly Hallows in a way that maps cleanly onto their personalities and roles. Harry corresponds to the invisibility cloak because he values protection, humility, survival over dominance, and he's shaped like a triangle. Ron aligns with the Elder Wand, struggling most with insecurity, status, the temptation of power, and he's shaped like a straight line. And lastly, Hermione mirrors the Resurrection Stone, acting as the keeper of memory, knowledge, and the past, constantly pulling forward what has already been lost or forgotten. And she is Of course, shaped like a circle. This is not stated in canon, where the three are largely described as people-shaped, but the parallels are consistent and deliberate enough to function as structural symbolism. You know, reading this back, maybe I shouldn't write these things after I've taken my nightly melatonin gummies. Look, the point is, the Hallows are not just objects. They are temptations, and each member of the trio represents a different way of responding to them. Harry did not name a child after Remus Lupin on purpose. In the epilogue, Harry names his children after figures who mattered deeply to him. Yet, Remus Lupin is notably absent. This omission sparked immediate speculation, given Lupin's role as a mentor and surrogate family figure. Rowling later confirmed the reasoning. Harry deliberately avoided using Remus's name because he believed Teddy Lupin, Remus's son, should have the option to carry his father's name forward himself. This reframes the absence as an act of restraint rather than forgetfulness. Harry is not honoring the dead indiscriminately. He is consciously leaving space for the living, which is a rare moment of emotional maturity in a series otherwise fueled by grief-driven naming decisions. Plus, after 3 kids, Ginny made Harry get a vasectomy, vas deferens snippicus, so he couldn't name another kid Remus even if he wanted to. Hogwarts is one of many wizarding schools worldwide. For most of the series, Hogwarts appears to function as the center of the magical universe, largely because the entire 7-book Harry Potter saga takes place there. Fans theorized early on that this could not possibly be the only major wizarding school, and they were correct. Rowling later confirmed the existence of 11 major magical schools around the world, including Beauxbatons, Durmstrang, Ilvermorny, and others spread across multiple continents, like Australia's Spells and Smells, the only wizard school that focuses solely on scent-based magic. Okay, you caught me. I made that one up. The existence of other wizarding schools reframes Hogwarts as prestigious, rather than unique. The wizarding world is larger, more decentralized, and more culturally varied than the books initially suggest. Hogwarts just happens to be where the paperwork nightmare is set. War trauma never truly healed for the survivors. The end of the war does not reset the wizarding world to a cheerful post-credits scene. Rowling confirmed that many survivors of the Battle of Hogwarts carried lifelong psychological scars. Fear, grief, and loss did not fade simply because Voldemort was gone. This explains why so many characters later name their children after fallen friends. Well, that and after 1,084,170 words across 7 books, J.K. Rowling was too tired to come up with brand new names. It also explains why the post-war wizarding world feels quieter, rather than triumphant. The victory is real, but it is expensive. The series does not end with healing. It ends with survival, which is a far more realistic outcome for anyone who has lived through a war. Neville's parents will never recover. Frank and Alice Longbottom were tortured into insanity by Bellatrix Lestrange using the Cruciatus Curse, and the damage is permanent. Rowling later confirmed that there is no spell, treatment, or magical intervention capable of restoring their minds. Unlike physical injuries, this kind of magical trauma cannot be undone. They remain alive, cared for at St. Mungo's Hospital, but mentally unreachable for the rest of their lives. This matters because it establishes a hard limit on magic. The wizarding world can regrow bones overnight, but it cannot fix everything. Thank God Neville grew up to be hot, so at least his life wasn't a complete crapfest. Ron and Harry never graduated Hogwarts. The boy who lived is technically the boy who dropped out. Both Harry Potter and his BGF, best ginger forever, never completed their final year at Hogwarts and never formally graduated. This was later confirmed by J.K. Rowling. After leaving school to hunt Horcruxes, neither of them returned once the war ended. Hermione Granger did go back and finished her education, because of course she did. Ron and Harry, on the other hand, moved straight into careers at the Ministry of Magic without formal qualifications. This works only because the post-war ministry made exceptions for people who had, in technical terms, saved the entire wizarding world. The important clarification here is that Hogwarts graduation is not a hard legal requirement for employment. It is a standard path, not an unbreakable rule. Paperwork matters, unless you defeat Voldemort, in which case the system suddenly becomes very flexible. Voldemort could have lived for centuries without Horcruxes. Given the confirmed wizarding lifespan, Voldemort's fear of death becomes deeply ironic. Wizards can naturally live for well over a century, sometimes approaching 200 years. Voldemort dies at around 71 years old, meaning he shortened his own life dramatically through violence, instability, and reckless soul magic. Hey, you know what they say, live fast, die young, and leave a noseless corpse. If he had avoided Horcruxes, avoided constant physical destruction, and avoided declaring war on the world every few years, he could have lived far longer than he did. His immortality project did not extend his life. It destabilized it. In attempting to conquer death, Voldemort ensured that his life would be shorter, uglier, and far more fragile than it ever needed to be. To quote Alanis Morissette, "Isn't it ironic?" George Weasley was permanently changed by Fred's death. Fred and George Weasley are written as a matched set for the entire series, often treated narratively as a single unit split across two bodies, because everything J.K. Rowling knows about twins comes from those creepy girls in The Shining. Their dialogue overlaps, their inventions are collaborative, and even their identities are blurred to the point that other characters regularly confuse them. When Fred is killed during the Battle of Hogwarts, the story does not frame it as the loss of one twin. It frames it as the destruction of a system. Rowling later confirmed that George is never truly the same after Fred's death. He continues running Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, but the tone of his life shifts permanently. This is not a temporary grieving period. It is a lifelong alteration. A popular fan theory claims George can no longer cast a Patronus, because Patronuses require strong, happy memories, and the loss of Fred removed George's emotional foundation. While Rowling never confirmed the Patronus-specific detail, she did confirm the underlying premise. George carries the damage forever. The joke shop survives, but the jokes themselves do not recover in the same way, mainly because Fred was in charge of the setups, leaving George to spend the rest of his life uttering punchlines that make no sense out of context. This distinction matters. The wizarding world can repair bodies, regrow bones, and erase curses, but it cannot restore a person whose identity was built around someone who no longer exists. George does not lose his magic. He loses his other half, and the series treats that as a wound magic cannot fix. Somehow, half the wizarding world exists in people's heads instead of the books. Between movie shortcuts, fanfiction, TikTok facts, and drunken 2 a.m. tweets from J.K. Rowling, entire pieces of canon have been quietly rewritten, and most people don't even realize it. Today, we're breaking down the fake Harry Potter facts everyone still believes, one by one, and setting the record straight. Accio canon. Like that George Weasley couldn't produce a Patronus after Fred's death. What people believe is that after Fred died, George was so emotionally destroyed that he permanently lost the ability to cast a Patronus. This is known in the wizarding world as PD, or Patronile Dysfunction. The fake fact is that George canonically could never produce one again because he had no happy memories left. That sounds tragic. It also sounds dramatic. It also sounds hella fake because it never happens in the books. A Patronus is not powered by general life satisfaction, but rather by focusing on one specific powerful positive memory. Harry casts one while being actively hunted by Voldemort. He casts one after watching Cedric die. He casts one while reliving trauma. The spell does not require your life to be sunshine and fireworks. It simply requires a strong memory in that moment. George survives the war. 19 years later, he's married to Angelina Johnson and has children. He names his son Fred. That's not someone who has been magically stripped of joy. That's someone who is grieving, but still capable of love, connection, and positive memory. There is no line in the books, no interview, no Wizarding World article saying George lost the ability to cast a Patronus. The idea comes from fans equating grief with magical shutdown. The series never supports that, and in fact, all canon sources point to George still being able to get his Patronus up if he really concentrates. The Marauders map permanently showing mischief managed after Lupin's death. What people believe is that when Remus Lupin died, the Marauders map locked itself and permanently displayed mischief managed as a tribute to the last Marauder. The fake fact is that the map stopped working entirely after Lupin's death. It's poetic. It's symbolic. It's complete poppycock. The Marauders map, much like the 8-bit video games your grandparents used to play, uses a password system. You say,
"I solemnly swear that I am up to no good."
And it activates. You say,
"Mischief managed."
and it closes. That's the mechanism. There's no emotional clause built into it. In Deathly Hallows, Harry still uses the map during his 7th-year absence to keep track of Ginny and the others at Hogwarts. It functions normally. It doesn't freeze. It doesn't go into mourning mode. It doesn't retire itself. The map is a magical GPS and not a self-aware tribute to its creators. The idea that it cares even the slightest bit about what happens to the Marauders is as absurd as Siri telling you she can't remember the directions to your friend's house because she's too broken up about your pet turtle dying. There is no canon evidence to suggest the map operates any differently post-Lupin than it does normally. Password in, password out. Lucius Malfoy being related to Xenophilius Lovegood. What people believe is that Lucius Malfoy and Xenophilius Lovegood are secretly brothers or closely related, possibly separated by ideology or a mix-up with the stork. The fake fact is that the Malfoy and Lovegood families share a direct blood connection. This one usually comes down to hair. They're both described as having long, pale blonde hair. That's it. That's the evidence. By that logic, I guess Sydney Sweeney is Miss Piggy's illegitimate daughter. There is no canonical family tree linking them. The Malfoys are a documented, pure-blood family. The Lovegoods are not listed as part of that lineage. No book ever hints at estrangement, hidden siblings, or family scandal between Lucius and Xenophilius. And even if they were brothers, that would dramatically affect the story. Lucius is deeply involved with Voldemort's ideology for most of the series. Xenophilius runs a conspiracy magazine and later betrays Harry under pressure to save Luna. That's not a secret Malfoy family subplot. That's a completely separate family with completely separate motivations. Shared hair colors is not a bloodline. If it were, all bald people would be orphans. Look, just because you didn't get it doesn't mean it wasn't a good joke. Anyway, the books never connect Lucius and Xeno-Warrior Princess... Wait, that's not right. Whatever the guy's name is. The idea exists entirely in fan speculation. Neville and Luna got married. Somehow, this one refuses to die. A lot of fans are convinced Neville Longbottom and Luna Lovegood ended up together. The fake fact is that they canonically married after the war. The films absolutely encourage this idea. In Deathly Hallows Part 2, Neville gives Luna a slightly dramatic confession before the battle. It feels like a setup. It looks like a setup. It is not a setup. In the books, Neville marries Hannah Abbott, a Hufflepuff who appears multiple times throughout the series. She later becomes the landlady of the Leaky Cauldron. Luna, on the other hand, marries Rolf Scamander, the grandson of Newt Scamander, not the piano-playing dog from the Muppets. Now that information is one of those little lore nuggets J.K. Rowling randomly pooped out years after the books were written, but it's canon all the same. There is no textual evidence of a romantic relationship between Neville and Luna in the books. They're friends, they're both outsiders, but that's where their compatibility ends. Luna is an eccentric conspiracy theorist who loves weird animals, and Neville's the kind of guy who would marry a Hufflepuff. If you know, you know. They would never make it as a couple, and both are much better off with their respective canon spouses. The Potters Cat Was Crookshanks. This theory has been repeated so often that many people treat it as established lore. The fake fact is that the cat seen with James and Lily Potter was actually Crookshanks. The argument usually goes like this. Crookshanks immediately trusted Sirius Black in his animagus form. Crookshanks also recognized Peter Pettigrew. Therefore, Crookshanks must have known them before. Therefore, Crookshanks must have been the Potter's cat. That is an impressive number of logical leaps. Yes, promotional artwork shows baby Harry with a cat that resembles Crookshanks. That artwork is not confirmation of identity. The books never state that the Potters owned Crookshanks specifically. They owned a cat. That is all we are told. Crookshanks is described as unusually intelligent and capable of recognizing when someone is not what they seem. That is a trait of his species. Part Kneazle. Kneazles are known for detecting untrustworthy people. He does not need a prior relationship with Sirius to recognize that Sirius is not a threat. There is no canon confirmation that Crookshanks belonged to James and Lily. It is a popular theory, but it is not a fact. Cho Chang married Dudley Dursley. At first glance, this sounds like a joke. It is not presented as one online. The fake fact is that Cho Chang married Dudley Dursley and had magical children with him after some not-so-magical intercourse. Or at least that's what I would assume. This claim usually relies on two separate pieces of information being stitched together. First, it is stated in the extended canon that Cho eventually married a Muggle. Second, Dudley Dursley is confirmed to have married and had children. His wife is never named. Not that I blame her for staying anonymous. I wouldn't want anyone knowing I was married to Dudley Dursley either. From there, people connect the dots and decide. Same universe, unspecified spouse, must be Cho. And I get it. Their couple name would be Chudley, and that's just a fun word to say. But the pleasant way Chudley rolls off the tongue aside, there is no book passage, interview, or Wizarding World confirmation linking Cho to Dudley. The only confirmed detail is that Cho married a Muggle man. Dudley's wife is never identified, and nothing suggests she is connected to the Wizarding World. The additional claim that they had magical children who attended Hogwarts is even further removed from canon. Dudley's children are mentioned, but there is no indication that they are magical. Two unnamed spouses do not automatically equal the same person. The series never connects Cho and Dudley in any way beyond both knowing Harry existed. Pandora Lovegood was related to the Lestranges or other Death Eaters. Pandora Lovegood has somehow become the most over-assigned relative in the wizarding world. The fake fact is that she was secretly the sister of Rodolphus Lestrange or Evan Rosier, or connected to various Death Eater families. Here is what we actually know about Pandora Lovegood. She was Luna's mother, she was described as clever and experimental, and she died when one of her magical experiments went wrong. That is the full canon summary. There is no mention of her maiden name in the books. There is no stated family tree. There is no line connecting her to the Lestranges, the Rosiers, or any known Death Eater bloodline. We don't know her social security number, her blood type, or even if she has the gene that makes cilantro taste like soap. We know nothing whatsoever about Pandora, least of all who she's related to. The claim appears to originate from fanfiction, and then spread outward as if it were confirmed lore. If Pandora were the sister of Rodolphus Lestrange, that would mean Luna was directly related to one of Voldemort's most loyal followers. That is not a small detail. The books never hint at such a connection. Xenophilius is eccentric and later desperate, but he is not tied to Death Eater ideology through marriage or blood. Pandora's mystery makes her easy to rewrite. Mystery does not equal secret villain ancestry. Mad-Eye Moody was officially sorted into Hufflepuff. This one often sounds authoritative because people claim it's confirmed. The fake fact is that Alistair Mad-Eye Moody was canonically sorted into Hufflepuff. We are never told which Hogwarts house Moody belonged to. Not in the books, not in the interviews, not in official supplementary writing. The confusion likely stems from personality traits. Moody is loyal, hardworking, and fiercely protective, qualities associated with Hufflepuff. But traits are not sorting records. The text never states his house. In fact, misinformation around this became so widespread that search engines and AI summaries began confidently listing Hufflepuff as his official house. That does not make it true. It simply means repetition created false authority. Everyone knows that Hogwarts students can only be Hufflepuffs if they come from the Hufflepuff region of the UK. Everyone else is just a sparkling Ravenclaw. The Zoo Snake in Philosopher's Stone was Nagini. This theory resurfaces constantly because it feels neatly circular. You know, kind of like a snake eating its tail. Eh? The fake fact is that the boa constrictor Harry frees at the zoo is actually Nagini. In Philosopher's Stone, Harry speaks Parseltongue to a snake at the zoo. The snake is identified in the book as a boa constrictor from Brazil. It escapes after Harry accidentally removes the glass. That is the full extent of its involvement. Nagini, by contrast, is introduced later as Voldemort's snake. She is eventually revealed to be a Horcrux. In later canon expansions, she is explained as a Maledictus, a human cursed to permanently transform into a snake. Which, given that you just know Voldemort hit that at some point, makes it a little less creepy. Like the teeniest, tiniest bit. J.K. Rowling has directly addressed this theory, stating that the Zoo Snake was not Nagini. The two are not connected. The timeline does not support it, and neither does the species detail. Nagini is not described as a Brazilian zoo snake that randomly encountered young Harry. The connection exists because both are snakes, and Harry speaks to both. That is the entire foundation. Canon does not link them. Charlie Weasley and Victor Crumb got married. This claim often appears framed as hidden representation that the books supposedly implied. The fake fact is that Charlie Weasley and Victor Crumb canonically married. There is no text anywhere in the series suggesting a romantic relationship between Charlie and Victor. They're both Quidditch players. They both enjoy physically demanding work. That is the overlap. Victor Crumb is explicitly shown expressing romantic interest in Hermione Granger. He also makes comments indicating interest in other girls at Hogwarts. His romantic orientation is presented clearly within the text. Charlie Weasley, on the other hand, is described as working with dragons in Romania and being intensely focused on his career, i.e., most likely hooking up with one of the dragons. He is not shown in a long-term relationship during the books, probably because he's too busy chasing Dragon Tail, but the absence of a confirmed partner does not automatically create one. This pairing largely originates in fanfiction communities. Fan-created relationships are valid creative exercises, but they are not canon unless the books state them, and the books do not. Draco Malfoy cannot cast a Patronus because he has no happy memories. This one is usually presented as if it's an official statement. The fake fact is that Draco Malfoy is incapable of casting a Patronus because his life is too miserable. The truth is, Draco was never seen attempting to cast a Patronus in the books. We have no idea whether he can or cannot produce one. We don't even know what form his Patronus would take. Although, if I had to guess, it would be a weasel or some weasel-adjacent rodent. Draco is just too much like a Weasley little jerk not to have something small and conniving for his Patronus. The assumption comes from Draco's increasingly pressured situation in Half-Blood Prince. He is frightened, conflicted, and under threat from Voldemort. That does not mean there are no positive memories, though. He grew up wealthy, close to his parents, surrounded by status and comfort. Those are positive memories, whether morally admirable or not. The Patronus charm requires a strong positive memory, not moral goodness. It is entirely possible for morally questionable characters to cast one, and there is no canon confirmation that Draco lacks the ability. The claim that J.K. Rowling confirmed it is unsupported. No such confirmation exists in the text or official supplementary material, or anywhere on social media. Draco attended Fred's funeral and was secretly devastated. This one tends to appear in emotional tribute posts. The fake fact is that Draco Malfoy attended Fred Weasley's funeral and was deeply affected by his death. Here's the issue. Draco is a jerky little weasel, and Fred's funeral is never described in the books. The Battle of Hogwarts ends with mourning. Yes, we are told that many died. We see characters grieving, but there is no detailed funeral scene for Fred in canon. There's no guest list. There's no passage placing Draco there. Nor would there be. Draco may have ended up kind of being an okay guy, but he was still trying to be a full-fledged Death Eater, right up until the final few battles. It would take a while before anyone on Team Potter would be willing to forgive him, let alone invite him to a private ceremony for grieving one of their closest loved ones. Draco's final scenes in Deathly Hallows show him disarmed, frightened, and later sitting in the Great Hall with his parents. After that, we jump forward 19 years. There is no textual evidence that he attended any Weasley memorial. The idea that he was secretly devastated is entirely speculative. Draco's arc does show hesitation and fear, especially in Half-Blood Prince, but that does not translate into documented grief over Fred. It is a character interpretation layered on top of a non-existent scene. No funeral scene, no attendance confirmation, no canon evidence. Lavender Brown became a werewolf. Because the scene is chaotic, the myth feels plausible. The fake fact is that Lavender Brown survived the Battle of Hogwarts and became a werewolf after being bitten by Fenrir Greyback. In Deathly Hallows, Lavender is attacked by Greyback during the battle. She's described as feebly stirring after the attack. That line has created confusion. I, for one, don't understand how a weak stirring technique equals werewolf, but fans will make theories out of anything. Fenrir Greyback is known for attacking victims even when he is not transformed. Importantly, werewolf transmission typically occurs when the attacker is in full wolf form during a full moon. At the time of the Battle of Hogwarts, there is no indication that it was a full moon. The text does not explicitly state that Lavender becomes a werewolf. It also does not clearly confirm her survival in the original version of the book. Later clarifications from supplementary material indicate that she died from her injuries. Hermione had a sister named Felicity. This one tends to be delivered with surprising confidence. The fake fact is that Hermione Granger has an older sister named Felicity. Hermione is consistently portrayed as an only child. Her parents are both dentists. There is no sibling mentioned in Philosopher's Stone when her background is introduced. There is no sibling referenced when she modifies her parents' memories in Deathly Hallows. When Hermione sends her parents away for safety and erases herself from their memories, there is no mention of protecting a sister. When she discusses family holidays, skiing trips, or her home life, no sibling is present. Either Hermione and her sister had some huge falling out where neither even acknowledges the other's existence, or, the much more likely scenario, Hermione is an only child. The name Felicity originates in fanfiction. It does not appear anywhere in the 7 books. Hermione has 2 parents. That is the full family structure presented in canon. Sirius Black was expelled from Hogwarts in his 6th year. This one usually appears as part of a larger backstory rewrite. The fake fact is that Sirius Black was expelled from Hogwarts in his 6th year for dangerous behavior. There is no passage in any of the 7 books stating that Sirius was expelled. In fact, quite the opposite. In Order of the Phoenix, Sirius speaks about his 7th year at Hogwarts. He mentions that James and Lily began dating in their final year, which places him at school with them through his 7th year. We also know that Sirius inherited money and property from his family after running away at 16, but running away from home is not the same thing as being expelled from school. He continues attending Hogwarts despite being estranged from the Black family. Psh, if I didn't have my parents there to make me go to school, there's no way I would have kept going. What a nerd! The confusion may stem from the Snape's worst memory incident, where Sirius and James publicly humiliate Snape. That event occurred in 5th year. It was reckless and cruel, but it did not lead to expulsion. Lily Luna Potter married Scorpius Malfoy and had 4 children. This claim bends canon characters with post-series imagination. The fake fact is that Harry's daughter, Lily Luna Potter, married Scorpius Malfoy and had 4 children with him. In the epilogue of Deathly Hallows, Lily Luna Potter is shown preparing for her 1st year at Hogwarts. That is the only canonical appearance she has in the original series. In The Cursed Child, which takes place later, Scorpius Malfoy develops a romantic interest in Rose Granger Weasley, Ron and Hermione's daughter. Lily is not part of that romantic storyline. There was no canonical information about Lily's eventual partner, spouse, or children. The claim that she married Scorpius and had 4 children is entirely fabricated. It does not appear in the books, the stage play, or official supplementary material. I can't even imagine what would happen if Lily brought Scorpius home and told her parents they were dating. Hey, Dad, you know that kid who tried to kill you at Hogwarts? I'm dating his son. Hey, Mom, remember the guy who tried to get you killed with that bogus diary your first year at Hogwarts? I'm dating his grandson. The only confirmed connection between the Potter and Malfoy children in canon is the tension and evolving friendship between Albus Potter and Scorpius. The Grangers had secret wizard blood through the Black family. This one attempts to solve a problem that does not exist. The fake fact is that Hermione's parents secretly descended from the Black family, meaning Hermione is not truly Muggle-born. Hermione Granger is explicitly identified as Muggle-born throughout the series. Her parents are consistently described as non-magical. They're dentists, for crying out loud. Probably the least magical profession ever, next to accountants. The Black family tree, which appears in Order of the Phoenix, is shown in detail at Grimmauld Place. Hermione's family name does not appear on it. There's no mention of a Granger branch. The idea seems to originate from a misunderstanding of how magical ability works in the series. Muggle-born witches and wizards are canonically born without known magical ancestry in their immediate family. The text never suggests Hermione has hidden pureblood roots. If she did, Dumbledore would have said something when he checked her midichlorians. The claim that this would make her secretly pureblood misunderstands the blood status system entirely. Blood purity in the series is ideological nonsense promoted by supremacists like the Malfoys. The books intentionally show that magical talent does not depend on ancestry. George Weasley ended up with Hermione Granger. This one tends to surface in what should have happened debates. The fake fact is that George Weasley and Hermione Granger eventually become a couple. Canon is very clear about both of their futures. Hermione marries Ron. This relationship is developed across all 7 books, from rivalry and frustration to partnership and affection. George, meanwhile, marries Angelina Johnson. Angelina is a Gryffindor chaser introduced in the early books. She later becomes George's wife, and they have 2 children. There is no textual interaction suggesting romantic interest between Hermione and George. They share scenes as friends within the larger group, but nothing beyond that. Now, technically, that doesn't mean they couldn't have had some secret affair behind their respective spouses' backs, but until J.K. Rowling explicitly says this, the myth of Hermorge Hermione will continue to exist only in fanfiction and discussions of alternate pairings. The books leave no ambiguity on this one. Durmstrang and Beauxbatons were single-gender schools. If you've only watched the films, this one feels completely true. The fake fact is that Durmstrang is an all-boys school and Beauxbatons is an all-girls school. In Goblet of Fire, the film adaptation shows Durmstrang arriving with only boys and Beauxbatons arriving with only girls. That visual choice strongly implies single-gender institutions. The books tell a different story. Durmstrang and Beauxbatons are co-ed, meaning both boys and girls attend each school. The film condensed the students' delegations for dramatic effect, but that does not redefine the institutions. Beauxbatons is also not exclusively French. It accepts students from multiple European countries, including Spain, Portugal, the Netherlands, and Belgium. Durmstrang, likewise, draws students from across Northern and Eastern Europe. The movie presentation created the myth. The book canon does not support it. Durmstrang is located in Bulgaria. The fake fact is that Durmstrang is located in Bulgaria because Viktor Krum is Bulgarian. Viktor Krum might play for the Bulgarian national Quidditch team, but that does not mean his school is in Bulgaria. Kind of like how drinking Irish whiskey doesn't make me Irish. It does make me an incredibly belligerent drunk, though, according to my now ex-wife. In Goblet of Fire, Durmstrang is described as being located far to the north of Hogwarts. It is said to be in a very cold region with limited daylight in winter. The school is also described as unplottable, meaning its location is magically concealed from maps. Supplementary information places Durmstrang in northern Europe, likely in Scandinavia. The descriptions of mountains, lakes, and extreme winter conditions align with that geography. Bulgaria, on the other hand, does not fit the described climate or distance. Krum, being Bulgarian, does not anchor the school's physical location. Students can attend schools outside their home country. Durmstrang is a Northern European institution, not a Bulgarian one. Grindelwald was more powerful than Voldemort. The fake fact is that Gellert Grindelwald was canonically more powerful than Lord Voldemort. This idea gained traction after the Fantastic Beasts films expanded Grindelwald's role. You really can't blame fans for thinking Grindelwald was the most powerful wizard alive, given that he was powerful enough to permanently change his appearance from that of Johnny Depp to Mads Mikkelsen without the use of a polyjuice potion. And Grindelwald was undeniably dangerous. He led a large-scale magical revolution in Europe and wielded the Elder Wand for a significant period. However, Voldemort was dangerouser. Wait, that's bad grammar. I meant to say more dangerouser. There, that's better. The books repeatedly refer to Voldemort as the most powerful dark wizard of all time. In Deathly Hallows, Rita Skeeter's biography of Dumbledore makes it clear that Grindelwald's reign was terrifying, but ultimately surpassed by Voldemort's later rise. The text explicitly notes that Grindelwald would miss the top position on the list of most dangerous dark wizards because someone else, Voldemort, came later. There are also key differences in their methods. Grindelwald did not create Horcruxes. Voldemort split his soul multiple times, anchoring himself to life through dark magic. Voldemort's willingness to mutilate his own soul represents a deeper level of magical extremity, not to mention a level of insanity no other wizard even comes close to. Grindelwald possessed the Elder Wand during much of his power. Voldemort did not initially have it and still achieved global terror. The books consistently frame Voldemort as the greater magical threat. Tom Riddle became evil because he was bullied. The simplified version of this claim usually sounds like, he was treated badly at the orphanage, so that's why he turned into Voldemort. The fake fact is that bullying caused Tom Riddle's descent into evil. The film subtly supports this misunderstanding. In Half-Blood Prince, young Tom tells Dumbledore he can make bad things happen to people who are mean to him. That phrasing suggests self-defense. In the book, the wording is different. Tom says he can make bad things happen to people who annoy him. That shift matters. It suggests he harms others not out of survival, but out of control and superiority. Can you blame him, though? Who wouldn't want to toss an Avada Kedavra at the jerk who cuts in front of them at the supermarket? Or the nincompoop driving like a turtle when there are no cops around? Dumbledore later investigates Tom's family history. He learns that Tom's mother used a love potion to trap his father into marriage. When the potion wore off, Tom Riddle Sr. abandoned her. Tom was conceived under magical coercion and born into emotional neglect. However, the books never present bullying as the root cause of Voldemort's evil. Dumbledore explicitly states that many children grow up in unhappy circumstances without becoming dark wizards, hell-bent on genociding every Muggle on Earth. Tom displayed cruelty and manipulation from a very young age. His descent is tied to his obsession with power, fear of death, and belief in blood purity, not simply childhood mistreatment. Dumbledore knew Sirius was innocent and sent him to Azkaban anyway. This one reframes Dumbledore as calculating to the extreme. The fake fact is that Dumbledore knew Sirius Black was innocent, but allowed him to be imprisoned so Harry would grow up with the Dursleys. In Prisoner of Azkaban, it is revealed that Peter Pettigrew was the true secret keeper and betrayed the Potters. Sirius was framed. Before that revelation, Dumbledore believed Sirius was guilty. In fact, he testified to the Ministry that Sirius had been the Potter's secret keeper. He did not know that James and Lily had switched the role to Peter at the last moment. The film adaptation contributes to confusion by softening certain dialogue, but the book is clear. Dumbledore did not have secret knowledge of Sirius's innocence. Once he hears Harry and Hermione's account in the Shrieking Shack, he reevaluates the situation and assists in the attempt to save Sirius. That reaction only makes sense if he previously believed Sirius was guilty. There is no textual evidence that Dumbledore knowingly sent an innocent man to Azkaban as part of a long-term plan. He was wrong, not omniscient. Trust me, there are plenty of other things to blame Dumbledore for without accusing him of imprisoning innocent wizards for the lulz. Dumbledore used chocolate frog cards as informants. This theory sounds clever enough that people sometimes repeat it as hidden canon. The fake fact is that Dumbledore used his chocolate frog cards as a secret surveillance network. The logic usually goes like this. Portraits in the wizarding world can move and retain personality traits. They're like a more limited version of Force Ghosts. Dumbledore's image appears on chocolate frog cards. Therefore, he could use thousands of cards across the country to spy on people and gather information. It falls apart once you look at how magical portraits actually function. In official supplementary writing, magical portraits are described as requiring training from the subject. A headmaster's portrait, for example, is painted while they are alive. The subject then spends time teaching the portrait their mannerisms and knowledge. That is why Hogwarts headmasters can later advise successors through their portraits. Oh man, I can't believe we were deprived of a scene in the movies where Dumbledore is sitting there teaching his portrait tricks like it's a dog. Chocolate frog cards are mass-produced magical images. They're not individually trained replicas containing full consciousness or intelligence. They move, they speak briefly, and they may wander off frame, but they are not enchanted spy devices with independent agency. That's like when superstitious people act all scared around Ouija boards, despite the fact that they're churned out by the thousands in some board game factory somewhere. If demons are real, I highly doubt they're using some piece of cardboard from Hasbro as a gateway into our world. There is no scene in the books where a card reports back to Dumbledore. There is no indication that he can communicate through them. The theory is entertaining, but canon does not support it. Only Basilisk Venom or the Sword of Gryffindor can destroy a Horcrux. This myth is usually presented as a hard rule. The fake fact is that Horcruxes can only be destroyed by Basilisk Venom or the Sword of Gryffindor. In Deathly Hallows, Hermione explains that a Horcrux must be damaged beyond magical repair in order to be destroyed. That is the actual requirement. Basilisk Venom works because it is a substance so destructive that magical repair spells cannot reverse its damage. The Sword of Gryffindor works because it absorbed Basilisk Venom when Harry stabbed the Basilisk in Chamber of Secrets. The sword did not start with that power. It gained it. However, Basilisk Venom is not the only method. Any convenient plot device will do. Fiendfire, a cursed magical fire, is explicitly shown destroying Ravenclaw's diadem in the Room of Requirement in the book. The film adaptation alters the details, but the book confirms that the diadem is consumed by Fiendfire. The Killing Curse also destroys the fragment of Voldemort's soul inside Harry when Voldemort strikes him in the Forbidden Forest. That is another example of destruction beyond repair. The rule is not venom only. The rule is irreversible magical damage. Harry snapped the Elder Wand and threw it away. If you've only seen the films, this one feels definitive. The fake fact is that Harry breaks the Elder Wand in half and discards it at the end of the story. That scene happens in the film adaptation of Deathly Hallows Part 2. It does not happen in the book. In the novel, Harry uses the Elder Wand to repair his original wand, which had been broken earlier in the story. After that, he returns the Elder Wand to Dumbledore's tomb. His reasoning is strategic. The Elder Wand transfers allegiance when its master is defeated or disarmed. Harry plans to live a normal life. If he dies undefeated, the wand's power will die with him. By placing it back in the tomb, he removes it from circulation while preserving that condition. I wouldn't have left it there personally. What if Dumbledore comes back as a zombie? Now he's a zombie with the most powerful wand in existence? Accio brains. Breaking it. A surprising amount of what people think they know about Harry Potter is flat out wrong. For instance, Voldemort never actually says,
Harry, I am your father.
Wait, never mind, that's Star Wars. Anywho, from spells that don't work the way fans assume, to characters whose reputations were completely rewritten by fandom, these myths have survived for decades. Today, we're breaking down 30 of the most widely believed, but totally incorrect Harry Potter facts, and explaining what the books and Rowling actually say. Myth 1. Harry was a Horcrux. Harry was never a Horcrux because a Horcrux requires a specific, deliberate spell to bind a torn soul fragment into an object. Voldemort did not cast that spell on Harry. Instead, when Voldemort's killing curse rebounded in Godric's Hollow, a damaged piece of his soul broke free and attached itself to the only living thing in the room. The books describe Harry as an accidental container, not a Horcrux, and Rowling confirmed this multiple times. Unlike real horse crutches, Harry isn't a mobility aid designed to help a 400-kilogram quadruped go. Wait, horse crutches? Man, that's the last time I used ChatGPT to write one of these scripts. What I meant to say is, unlike real Horcruxes, Harry did not have protective enchantments surrounding the soul shard, nor was he intended to anger Voldemort to life. He simply carried a fragment that influenced his thoughts, his connection to Voldemort, and his ability to sense emotions. In practical terms, Harry was more like a magically unfortunate backpack. You know, like the one Dora the Explorer carries around. But not as purple. Myth 2. Neville was the real chosen one.
But I am the chosen one. Okay, sorry.
Look, we all know that the kid who played Neville grew up to be a certified hunk, while Daniel Radcliffe is still the same scrawny dork he was in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. But in terms of J.K. Rowling's wizarding saga, Longbottom was always meant to be a red herring. The prophecy described a child born at the end of July to parents who had defied Voldemort 3 times, meaning the description fit both Harry and Neville. However, the prophecy never identifies who the chosen one actually is.
All right then, keep your secrets.
The determining factor is Voldemort, who chooses his target based on his own interpretation. By attacking Harry, he marks Harry as the chosen one, and unintentionally fulfills the prophecy's final clause that the Dark Lord will mark him as his equal. Neville could have become the chosen one had Voldemort chosen him, But since Voldemort acted first, the magical outcome locked Harry into that role. Neville's story shows that potential and prophecy are two different things. One predicts a path, the other depends entirely on a villain making a very dramatic choice. Myth 3. The Killing Curse cannot be blocked. The Killing Curse cannot be blocked by a standard defensive spell, which is where the myth comes from, but it is not unstoppable. The books demonstrate multiple countermeasures. Solid physical objects, such as statues, can absorb or deflect it, which is shown during the Ministry of Magic battle. Certain magical interactions also interfere with it, including Priori Incantatem, which occurs because Harry's and Voldemort's wands share the same Phoenix Feather core. Additionally, unique enchantments, like Lily's Sacrificial Protection, can neutralize or reflect the curse entirely. The curse's reputation stems from its simplicity. A direct hit equals death. But in practice, the wizarding world offers several ways to avoid, interrupt, or redirect it. Unblockable, in this case, means don't try to parry it with a shield charm, unless you want to die tired. Human or otherwise, it's your call. Myth 4. Slytherin House is full of evil people. Slytherin House is built around ambition, leadership, and strategic thinking, not an automatic desire to commit felonies before graduation. The Sorting Hat repeatedly states that no house owns moral superiority.
And Slytherin will help you on the way to greatness, there's no doubt about that.
And Slytherin's reputation comes largely from Voldemort recruiting heavily from its ranks. Sure, the majority of Slytherins turn out to be evil edgelords, but the books make sure to show a few ordinary, non-evil Slytherins who study, play Quidditch, and generally mind their own business. Rowling clarifies that Slytherins have a strong sense of self-preservation, which often makes them appear less heroic, simply because they avoid dying unnecessarily. The house's traits, resourcefulness, cunning, and adaptability are the same qualities celebrated in many leaders across history. The majority of those leaders turning out to be horrible tyrants is just kind of like a weird coincidence. The fact that several Slytherins survive the series comfortably may indicate that they were using those traits correctly. Evil requires intent. Ambition just requires wanting to get ahead without tripping over your own robes. Myth 5. Dumbledore was always stronger than Voldemort. Dumbledore is powerful, but the idea that he could casually overpower Voldemort ignores what the books actually show. Dumbledore explicitly states that their powers are roughly equal, and the duel in the Ministry demonstrates both wizards operating at their highest level. Dumbledore's advantage comes from insight, experience, and emotional intelligence, skills Voldemort never developed because he was too busy splitting his soul like it was the check at a fancy restaurant. Voldemort, meanwhile, excels in raw power and ruthlessness, qualities Dumbledore lacks because, well, despite his power, he's really just a big old teddy bear. Their conflict is defined not by one overwhelming the other, but by a balance of strengths that makes direct confrontation risky for both. Dumbledore avoids killing Voldemort in earlier years because he lacks full knowledge of the Horcruxes, not because he's waiting politely. The balance between them is what creates the narrative tension, not a one-sided power gap. Myth 6. Hermione always acts logically. Hermione is defined by intelligence, but assuming she behaves with perfect logic at all times ignores multiple scenes where emotion drives her decisions. She punches Draco after months of frustration.
Let's go! Quick! Let's go! Run! A word to anyone, understood?
That felt good.
Which is not listed in any magical problem-solving textbook. She confunds Cormac McLaggen during Quidditch trials, demonstrating that even the most rule-focused student can bend regulations when the stakes involve Ron's self-esteem. Spew is another example. Motivated entirely by compassion, it overlooks the complexities of house elf culture and their differing relationship to freedom. Hermione's logic is strongest within academic settings, but personal relationships, social justice causes, and emotional triggers routinely override her rational approach. Rather than diminishing her intelligence, these moments highlight her humanity. Even the brightest witch of her age occasionally makes decisions powered by feelings instead of flowcharts.
Where have you been? Never mind, off to bed, both of you.
Hogwarts is, after all, brimming with witches and wizards in the throes of puberty. It's a miracle the place is still standing with all those hormonal teens running around carrying sticks capable of obliterating someone with just a word. Myth 7. Ron is useless comic relief. Ron's humor often overshadows his actual competence, which leads to the misconception that he contributes nothing of value. In reality, Ron provides strategic insight that repeatedly saves the group. His chess mastery in first year isn't accidental. It demonstrates advanced battlefield reasoning, which later appears in tactical decisions during the Horcrux hunt. Ron's magical skill is also stronger than fans often acknowledge. He performs complex defensive spells, helps break into the Ministry, and proves capable enough that Rowling later places him in the Aurora office, an area not known for hiring comic relief. His emotional volatility sometimes masks his capability, but he consistently demonstrates bravery, loyalty, and quick problem solving. The Weasley inferiority complex may convince Ron he's average, but the text clearly shows he provides skills neither Hermione nor Harry naturally possess. Not bad for a soulless ginger. Myth 8. Snape was secretly a good person. Snape's story is often flattened into a simple redemption arc, but the books present a more complicated figure. Snape's actions include cruelty towards students, long-term emotional intimidation, and carrying out Voldemort's goals up to the point they conflicted with Lily's memory. Snape is basically the wizarding equivalent of an incel. Rowling has clarified that Snape is not a hidden hero. He is a flawed, damaged man who chooses certain heroic actions because of personal loyalty rather than moral conviction. His bravery in spying for Dumbledore is significant, yet it coexists with persistent bitterness, bias, and vindictiveness.
You and Black, two of a kind, sentimental children, forever whining about how bitterly unfair your lives have been.
Snape protects Harry because of obligation, not affection, and he mistreats other students while doing it. Understanding Snape accurately requires accepting both parts of him. He performs heroic acts, but he is neither warm, noble, nor secretly virtuous beneath the surface. He's a dick. It's just, sometimes he's a dick who does the right thing. Myth 9. Wands choose wizards based on personality. Wand lore, as described by Ollivander and expanded in Rowling's Pottermore essays, emphasizes compatibility of magical style rather than personal characteristics. A wand responds to how a wizard channels magic. Things like intensity, precision, emotional range, and innate magical rhythm. Personality may correlate loosely with these traits, but the wand does not assess moral compass, favorite color, or how often the wizard forgets homework. Furthermore, wands can shift allegiance through skill, mastery, or disarming, showing they evaluate magical command more than personality traits. Even the Elder Wand, the most temperamental of them all, judges power ownership, not character. The myth likely arises from observing that certain wand woods align with certain archetypes. But these are tendencies, not personality tests. In short, wands are tools with preferences, not mystical therapists choosing ideal clients. Myth 10. Dementors kill people. Dementors do not kill. They remove the soul through the Dementor's kiss, leaving the body alive but permanently empty. Like my ex-wife, am I right? Lupin explains that the victim continues functioning biologically, breathing, eating, and existing, yet loses all consciousness, identity, and humanity. The person cannot think, feel, or recover because the soul, in wizarding terms, is the essential seat of self. The kiss is so feared not because it ends life, but because it leaves a living shell incapable of interaction or awareness. This misunderstanding likely persists because the consequences resemble death in every meaningful way except the literal biological one. Dementors also do not consume souls directly. The soul simply departs the body and cannot return. The Dementor's actual diet consists almost exclusively of jammy Dodgers and Red Bulls. The Ministry's willingness to use Dementors for punishment reveals more about their ethics than the creature's capabilities. Killing is simple. Erasing identity entirely is far more chilling. Myth 11. Expelliarmus is a weak spell. Expelliarmus is often viewed as a beginner's spell, because it appears early in the series and is frequently taught to younger students. However, just like a starter Pokemon, just because it's for beginners doesn't mean it's bad. Much like how a Squirtle's effectiveness depends on the trainer, Expelliarmus's effectiveness depends on the caster. At its core, the disarming charm removes an opponent's wand, instantly ending most duels because wizards rely on their wands for almost every combat action. Snape teaches it as a primary defensive tool, and experienced duelists modify it with force, speed, and accuracy. Expelliarmus can knock opponents unconscious, break their guard, or interrupt lethal spells mid-cast. Voldemort recognizes Harry's use of Expelliarmus precisely because it threatens him. Harry's consistent reliance on disarming rather than killing subverts Voldemort's expectations and interferes with his combat rhythm. In practice, Expelliarmus is not weak. It is simply humane, which might be the real reason some characters underestimate it. Myth 12. Draco Malfoy was forced into being a Death Eater. Draco is pressured by his family and circumstance, but the idea that he was entirely forced ignores his early enthusiasm for Voldemort's ideology.
No one asked your opinion, you filthy little mudblood.
Throughout his school years, Draco expresses admiration for pure-blood supremacy and openly mocks Muggleborns, suggesting he internalized his parents' values long before the Dark Mark appeared. When Voldemort assigns him the mission to kill Dumbledore, Draco initially embraces the task as an opportunity to restore his family's status. It is only as the mission progresses, and the reality of murder becomes unavoidable, that he begins to break under the psychological pressure. Draco's arc does not depict a reluctant recruit, but a privileged teenager whose beliefs collapse when confronted with real consequences. He is coerced later, but the initial willingness belongs entirely to him, not to Voldemort twisting his arm in Chapter 1. In other words, Draco was already leaning towards the dark side even before Wizard Palpatine got to him. Myth 13. The Elder Wand makes its master invincible. The Elder Wand is powerful, but it does not override basic limitations like skill, strategy, or the laws of physics. Dumbledore explains that wand strength depends primarily on the wizard using it. The Elder Wand amplifies magical ability, but it cannot transform an average duelist into an unstoppable force. In other words, if you sucked at magic without the wand, you'll still suck with it. Just because the Elder Wand looks like a sex toy doesn't mean using it will get you laid. Of course, we're not saying it could get you laid either. The wand's reputation for invincibility comes mostly from its history. Powerful wizards won duels with it, and stories exaggerated the results into legend. In practice, the wand's main quirk is an unusually strict loyalty system. It performs best for the wizard who has legitimately defeated its previous master. Even then, it does not prevent tactical errors, physical injury, or magical countermeasures. Grindelwald and Dumbledore's duel was legendary, not because of the wand, but because both wizards were exceptionally skilled. The wand is an amplifier, not a cheat code.
The Elder Wand belongs to the wizard who killed its last owner. You killed Dumbledore, Severus.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
Myth 14. Polyjuice Potion completely removes your identity. Polyjuice Potion changes physical appearance, but it does not override every identifying trait.
Reading? I didn't know you could read.
The voice is not guaranteed to shift convincingly, meaning impersonation often requires acting skill rather than pure magic. The potion also struggles with mismatched body types. Characters who transform into someone larger or smaller often feel uncomfortable or unstable. Magical signatures, such as a wizard's aura, remain identifiable to enchanted objects and certain spells. On the other hand, if you have really bad body odor, the potion should mask that, provided you don't use it to transform into anyone equally stinky. The potion cannot replicate non-human DNA properly, which is why Hermione's transformation into part cat persists until magical treatment is applied. Polyjuice grants exterior mimicry, but leaves internal characteristics unchanged. This is why impersonators must still navigate social cues, personal history, and behavioral expectations. The potion is a disguise, not a character override, which explains why the wizarding world still uses passwords rather than relying solely on facial recognition.
What's the password? What?
Myth 15. House-Elves Are Unintelligent. House-Elves display advanced magical ability that surpasses wand users in several areas, including teleportation within wards, high-level enchantment, and complex household magic. Their speech patterns and servile behavior often mislead observers into assuming limited intellect, but characters like Dobby and Creature demonstrate strategic reasoning, emotional depth, and strong moral judgment.
Master Weasley, so good to see you again.
We can try this.
Elves understand complex instructions, analyze human motives, and make independent decisions when emotionally motivated. Their culture values service as an expression of identity, not intellectual inferiority. This is why the Society for the Promotion of Elfish Welfare fails initially. Hermione misunderstands elf culture by interpreting it through human morality. Dobby waits on humans hand and foot because he was bred for it, not because he's too dumb to get a job waiting tables at the Three Broomsticks Inn. House elves possess knowledge of wizarding households, magical artifacts, and ancient traditions, sometimes exceeding that of the witches and wizards they serve. Their loyalty is learned, not innate, and their magic reflects capability rather than simplicity. Underestimating them says more about wizards than elves.
How dare you defy your masters!
Dobby has no master.
Myth 16. Animagus transformations require no effort once mastered. Becoming an animagus is one of the most difficult magical processes in the series, requiring years of discipline and absolute control over one's magical and emotional state. Even after the transformation is mastered, maintaining stability demands concentration. McGonagall explains that a single mistake during the training stages can lead to permanent disfigurement or uncontrolled partial transformation. The ritual involves brewing a month-long potion, holding a mandrake leaf in the mouth for weeks, aligning the transformation with celestial conditions, and performing wand work with perfect precision. Once achieved, the transformation becomes easier, but not effortless. Fatigue, stress, or emotional instability can disrupt it. Animagi also retain human awareness while in animal form, which requires mental focus to prevent instinct from overwhelming thought. The convenience shown by the Marauders reflects talent and practice, not magical autopilot. If you live in the wizarding world and just have to turn into something cute and fuzzy, you're better off just letting a werewolf bite you like Lupin did. Sure, it's painful, shameful, and many wizards will consider you a monster, but at least you don't have to wait a whole month for some dumb potion to cook. Seriously, all that magic, but the wizarding world doesn't have microwaves? Myth 17. Patronuses can't change. A Patronus is a magical projection shaped by a wizard's emotional landscape. So, when that landscape shifts dramatically, the Patronus can change as well. Rowling notes that trauma, love, loss, or profound identity shifts can alter a Patronus's form. This is why Shape's Patronus mirrors Lily's, and why characters, such as Tonks, display altered Patronuses during significant emotional states. The idea that a Patronus is fixed comes from students learning to spell at a young age, long before most major life changes occur. Patronuses reflect a wizard's deepest protective instincts, not a static symbol chosen at birth. The transformation does not indicate weakness or instability. It signals that the wizard's emotional core has evolved. In short, a Patronus is not a permanent reminder of emotional immaturity, like that tramp stamp I got my junior year in college. It is a magical mood ring with very high production value. Myth 18. You can apparate anywhere instantly. Apparition is fast, but it is far from universally accessible. Wards, anti-apparition enchantments, and protected areas like Hogwarts make many locations impossible to enter or exit via teleportation. Apparition also carries significant physical risk. Splinching occurs when the body fails to travel as one unit, resulting in missing limbs or partially relocated anatomy. Ron gets splinched in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1, and half his arm is missing. Now replace arm with a more sensitive part of your anatomy, and you'll understand why apparating isn't all it's cracked up to be.
Most people vomit the first time.
Can't imagine why.
Distance adds difficulty, and crowded or unfamiliar locations increase the chance of error. Emotional state matters as well. Fear or panic can disrupt magical coordination. Apparition requires a licensing exam because it demands precision, visual awareness, and spatial reasoning. Wizards often choose other transportation methods, not out of preference for inconvenience, but because apparition is unreliable when wards, safety protocols, or environmental barriers interfere. It is quick, but it is neither omnipotent nor idiot-proof, as the Ministry's paperwork likely reflects. Myth 19. All goblins hate wizards. Goblins are distrustful of wizarding authority, but the idea that they harbor universal hatred toward all wizards oversimplifies a very old political disagreement. Their tension comes from conflicting views on ownership and rights. Goblins believe that crafted items belong to the maker, not the purchaser, and should return to goblin hands when the owner dies. Wizards, unsurprisingly, disagree, leading to repeated historical conflicts. Despite this, individual goblins form cooperative or even friendly relationships with wizards. Bill Weasley works comfortably with them, and Gripbook initially helps Harry before their partnership collapses over conflicting definitions of fair. Goblins judge wizards based on behavior, not species, and their mistrust reflects centuries of political inequality rather than blanket hatred. In modern times, goblins dislike wizarding government policies. Not every wizard who walks into Gringotts with a withdrawal slip. Myth 20. Dobby was freed forever once given clothing. Dobby's freedom from the Malfoys is legally binding.
Master has given Dobby a sock.
But house elf magic does not automatically erase a lifetime of conditioned loyalty and cultural expectations. Rowling clarifies that elves view service as a core part of their identity, which means that receiving clothing breaks the contract with a family, not the internal desire to serve. This is why Dobby immediately seeks employment at Hogwarts, where he can continue working under fairer conditions. Additionally, house elves are bound by ancient magic that structures how they interact with masters, households, and orders. Freedom removes the master, but not the underlying magical framework. The misconception comes from treating elf liberation as identical to human emancipation, when the two operate under different cultural and magical properties. In short, Dobby is free, but he is still an elf. Just one with personal boundaries and socks. Myth 21. The Marauder's map shows everything. The Marauder's map shows the layout of Hogwarts and the names and movements of individuals within it, but it has important blind spots. It cannot display inanimate objects, magical artifacts, or the precise conditions inside protected spaces. The most notable limitation is the Room of Requirement. When the room is in use, it becomes undetectable, and the map reflects only a blank area. Additionally, the map cannot identify the true form of someone using Polyjuice Potion or disguise magic. It shows the person's actual name, not their appearance, which is why it exposes Barty Crouch Jr. in Goblet of Fire. The map is impressive, but it is not omniscient. It does not reveal passwords, spells, hidden objects, or intentions. It is a surveillance tool designed by 4 very clever rule breakers, not a magical satellite system. Oddly, one of the things the Marauder's map does show is if 2 people at Hogwarts are shagging. Thanks to Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban's end credits, we know that any students getting busy will be totally exposed by the map. Whether the map itself is a pervert, or Harry's dad and his friends were just super horny when they made it, I'll leave it up for you to decide. Myth 22. The Resurrection Stone brings people back from the dead. The Resurrection Stone does not resurrect anyone. It produces a non-physical echo shaped by the holder's memories and emotions. Unfortunately, the non-physical Echo Stone doesn't have the same ring to it as the Resurrection Stone. These summoned figures have awareness and personality, but they're not alive, cannot interact physically, and cannot return to the world of the living. They function more like magical projections than restored individuals. Basically, JK's derivative, yet legally distinct version of Force Ghosts. Rowling describes them as shadows, comforting but incomplete. In Deathly Hallows, Harry sees his parents, Lupin, and Sirius through the stone, but they explicitly state they cannot remain with him permanently. They offer guidance because the magic draws on Harry's emotional understanding of them, not because their souls have physically returned.
Does it hurt? Dying.
Quicker than falling asleep.
The misconception arises because the objects of the Deathly Hallows are often treated like mythic miracles, yet each has limitations. The stone grants reassurance, not resurrection, making it powerful, but profoundly bittersweet. Myth 23. Voldemort couldn't feel love because of the Horcruxes. Voldemort's incapacity for love predates his experiments with soul-splitting. In Half-Blood Prince, Dumbledore explains that Tom Riddle was born from a loveless union, his mother under the influence of a love potion, and grew up without any genuine affection. My parents didn't really get along either, so, hey, I totally get it. This absence shaped his emotional development long before he discovered dark magic. Horcruxes damage the soul further, intensifying cruelty, instability, and detachment, but they do not erase feelings that never existed. Tom's early behavior, manipulation, cruelty to peers, a fascination with domination, shows a persistent lack of empathy independent of later magical corruption. The Horcruxes amplify his worst traits. They do not create them. Voldemort does not fear love because of magical vulnerability, but because it represents a type of strength he never understood, and therefore could never counter through threats or spells. Myth 24. McGonagall is strict and humorless. McGonagall's stern appearance often hides her sharp, dry humor and occasional playfulness. The books frequently show her smiling at students' antics, quietly supporting harmless mischief, and delivering deadpan comments that go unnoticed by less observant readers.
Why is it, when something happens, it is always you three?
Believe me, Professor, I've been asking myself the same question for 6 years.
She can also turn into a cat. That's fun, right?
That was bloody brilliant.
Oh, thank you for that assessment, Mr. Weasley.
Oh, come on. Like you wouldn't jump at the chance to poop in a box and lick your nethers in public. Her early interactions with Harry and Ron reveal a teacher who recognizes potential long before the students do. She also joins in celebrations, supports Gryffindor victories, and even laughs during tense moments. Her disciplinary style is rooted in fairness rather than severity. She punishes to maintain order, not to intimidate. Furthermore, her loyalty to her students and colleagues is profound, and she shows warmth in subtle ways, such as gifting Harry his first broomstick or protecting students during wartime. McGonagall has rules, but she also has personality. The combination is what makes her effective. Stern does not mean humorless. Myth 25. Werewolves lose all memory after transformation. Lupin explains that werewolves in full transformation operate with diminished humanity, but they do not lose all awareness or memory. Their human mind is suppressed, yet traces of instinctual recognition remain. It's like when your uncle has a little too much eggnog on Christmas and gets blackout drunk, yet still somehow remembers the time your older brother tricked you into eating a cat turd. I was 3, Uncle Ernie. When are you gonna let it go? This is why werewolves may show selective aggression, territorial behavior, or reactions to familiar scents. The Ministry's strict regulations, such as requiring Wolfsbane potion, exist because the transformation creates a dangerous hybrid state, not a complete mental reset. Without the potion, the werewolf's dominant mindset is predatory, making conscious control impossible. However, Lupin notes that certain emotional impressions linger after the transformation ends, including shame, exhaustion, and fragmented recollections of movement or fear. The idea that werewolves have zero memory is convenient for folklore, but the books present a more nuanced reality. Diminished cognition, not total amnesia, which explains both the danger and the tragedy of the condition. Myth 26. Harry only survived because of plot armor. Harry's survival follows a series of explicitly stated magical mechanics rather than narrative coincidence. Lily's sacrificial protection creates a blood-based defensive enchantment that Voldemort cannot break, binding Harry to safety as long as he lives with Lily's blood relative. Now you know why Harry tolerated living with those horrid Dursleys even after he was skilled enough to Avada Kedavra the whole lot of them. The twin core connection between Harry's and Voldemort's wands further disrupts lethal spells during direct confrontation, a phenomenon explained through wand lore and demonstrated in Goblet of Fire. Later, Voldemort's resurrection incorporates Harry's blood, unintentionally extending the protection and preventing him from killing Harry directly. These combined factors create layered magical defenses that operate consistently through the series. Calling it plot armor ignores the rules Rowling establishes early on and reinforces repeatedly. Harry is protected not by luck, but by a long chain of magical consequences triggered by Voldemort's own choices and overconfidence.
The boy who lived, come to die.
Myth 27. Voldemort feared Dumbledore's magical power. Voldemort feared Dumbledore, but not solely, and not primarily, because of raw magical strength. Dumbledore represents an emotional competence Voldemort cannot understand. In Half-Blood Prince, Dumbledore explains that Voldemort fears both his abilities and his capacity to love, trust, and inspire loyalty. Like most edgelords, deep down, Voldemort is a sullen teen afraid to make any real emotional connections. Unlike Giga Chad Dumbledore, whose Riz allows him to aura farm all day. Sorry, my boss said I should try to appeal more to Gen Alpha viewers. Where was I? Dumbledore's insight into human nature allows him to anticipate Voldemort's strategies, manipulate information, and counteract long-term plans. Voldemort interprets love as a weakness, which leaves him blind to the advantages it provides, such as alliances, sacrifice, and moral conviction. This creates a tactical imbalance. Dumbledore understands Voldemort's mindset, but Voldemort cannot comprehend Dumbledore's. Their duel in the Ministry shows equal magical capability, but their philosophical difference is what unsettles Voldemort. In other words, he fears Dumbledore's worldview as much as his wand work, a problem no amount of dark magic can solve. Myth 28. Wands can be mastered only by winning duels. Wand allegiance is influenced by defeat, but dueling is only one of several pathways. In Rowling's wand lore, a wand recognizes control, not theatrics. If a wizard disarms, overpowers, or otherwise subdues another wizard, even non-violently, the wand may shift loyalty. This includes scenarios where the previous owner surrenders, is captured, or loses control of their wand through strategy rather than force. In other words, it's canon that you can win somebody's wand through a game of rock, paper, scissors. The Elder Wand is the most dramatic example. It switches allegiance when Draco simply disarms Dumbledore, not when Voldemort defeats anyone. Loyalty can even transfer indirectly, as the wand responds to the chain of mastery rather than specific spells cast. The misconception persists because wizards treat wand ownership like a prize-fight tradition, but the magic underlying it is more nuanced. Wands respond to power, intent, and authority, not just whoever wins the loudest duel. Myth 29. Hogwarts is the best magical school in the world. Hogwarts is iconic within the series because the narrative focuses on its students. But Rowling explicitly states that each major wizarding school specializes in different disciplines and none holds universal superiority. Castelo Bruxo in Brazil excels in magical creatures and herbology. Uagado in Africa is renowned for wandless magic, a skill that Hogwarts barely touches. Mahautakoro in Japan has the highest academic standards and a strict performance tradition that encourages mastery. Durmstrang emphasizes martial magic and elemental control, giving its students a reputation for disciplined combat proficiency. Ilvermorny in North America blends multiple traditions, producing versatile graduates who eat too much, talk too loudly, and carry their wands in a holster right next to their guns. Hogwarts' strengths include defense against the dark arts, transfiguration, and charms, but it falls behind in areas like wandless magic, martial spells, and magical creature handling. The belief that it is the best reflects narrative bias, not global ranking tables. Myth 30. The Ministry of Magic was purely incompetent. The Ministry's failures during Voldemort's return create the impression of systemic incompetence, but the institution functions effectively during ordinary periods. Its departments regulate international magical trade, uphold secrecy protocols, manage transportation, enforce wand laws, and oversee dangerous creature control. The collapse during Order of the Phoenix stems from political pressure, denial, and public relations concerns, rather than inherent inability. Cornelius Fudge prioritizes maintaining authority over acknowledging Voldemort's return, resulting in misinformation campaigns and security negligence. When leadership changes, the ministry's capabilities improve quickly, demonstrating that structural knowledge exists but requires accountable leadership. Even during crisis, individual departments, like the Department of Mysteries, continue functioning with precision. The ministry is flawed, bureaucratic, and occasionally corrupt, but not universally incompetent. Its problems mirror real governments. The system works until leadership stops listening to reality. It's not the ministry that's incompetent, it's the people who work there. Even after correcting all 30 myths, there's still one thing fans argue about more than anything else: the supposed logic gaps hidden inside the wizarding world. Some are misunderstandings, some are misread scenes, and some actually are problems the books never fully explain. J.K. Rowling is only human after all.
You think you know every Harry Potter plot hole? The missed Thestrals, the marauding map mistakes, the time travel headaches? Think again, because buried under the big ones are the quiet disasters, the ones that slipped right past even the die-hard fans. The moments where the logic of the wizarding world quietly packs its trunk, grabs a broom, and flies off without explanation. Why James and Lily weren't their own secret keepers. The Fidelius charm hides a secret within the soul of one chosen person, the secret keeper. That person is the only one capable of revealing the location protected by the spell. When the Potters used the charm, they chose Peter Pettigrew instead of themselves. The books never explain why they didn't just keep their own secret. Nothing in canon prevents it. The charm doesn't forbid self-keeping, and there's no magical rule stating it must be someone else. This means the Potters could have easily become their own secret keepers and avoided betrayal altogether. Instead, they entrusted their lives to the least trustworthy man in Britain, which, given the result, was not the brightest move in wizarding history. The trace problem at Privet Drive. The Ministry of Magic monitors underage wizards through an enchantment called the Trace, which detects when magic is performed near them. The flaw? It can't tell who cast the spell, only where it happened. When Dobby levitates a cake in Chamber of Secrets, the Ministry assumes Harry did it because he's the only wizard living at that address. Yet, in Order of the Phoenix, members of the Order openly use spells at Privet Drive to pack Harry's belongings, and the Trace conveniently forgets to tattle. The system that punished Harry for something he didn't do suddenly becomes blind to Tonks whipping her wand around like a house elf on caffeine. This inconsistency suggests the Trace works selectively, or more likely that Rowling didn't fully map out its mechanics at the time. Why the trio didn't multiply food. In Deathly Hallows, Hermione clearly states that food cannot be conjured from nothing, but it can be multiplied or summoned from elsewhere. By that logic, the trio could have multiplied what little food they had instead of starving through half the book. Multiplying food is a legitimate magical practice proven during the Great Hall feasts. The only explanation given is none. Not even Hermione, a walking encyclopedia of spells, brings it up. Maybe multiplied bread tastes like disappointment, or maybe Rowling didn't want her heroes well-fed and logical. Either way, it's a hole wide enough to drive a night bus through. Why Harry didn't see Thestrals earlier. Thestrals, the skeletal horses that pull the Hogwarts carriages, are visible only to those who have witnessed and accepted death. Harry first sees them in Order of the Phoenix after Cedric Diggory's death. The issue? He saw his mother die as a baby. According to the books, that should qualify. Rowling later patched this by explaining that a person must understand death to see Thestrals. Apparently, infants don't count because they can't process trauma between crying sessions. The second inconsistency comes when Harry fails to see them right after Cedric's death, but suddenly notices them months later. Rowling claimed the reality hadn't sunk in, yet. It's a tidy emotional explanation, but one that feels suspiciously like an author retrofitting rules after realizing her death horses broke the timeline. Fred and George missing Peter Pettigrew on the Marauders map. The Marauders map tracks every person in Hogwarts, name, location, and all. Fred and George owned it for years and gave it to Harry, yet somehow missed a man named Peter Pettigrew sleeping in Ron's bed every night. Even by Weasley standards, that's some next-level obliviousness. The only in-world fix comes from a fan theory suggesting that only the original Marauders could see each other's names on the map. Unfortunately, Rowling never confirmed it. Canonically, the map shows everyone. So yes, the twins apparently thought their brother had an imaginary adult roommate named Peter and just didn't care. Why Sirius didn't use Polyjuice Potion. After escaping Azkaban, Sirius Black hides out at Grimmauld Place but risks exposure whenever he leaves. He can transform into a large black dog. Helpful, but not exactly subtle when half of Britain is on the lookout for a large black dog. Polyjuice Potion could have made him look like anyone. The ingredients aren't impossible to get. His friends literally brewed it in a school bathroom at age 12. Sirius also had access to Order members like Snape and Dumbledore who could have helped. So why didn't he use it? The only reasoning is character-based. Sirius was arrogant, reckless, and didn't take orders well. Basically the kind of man who believes shape-shifting into a Labrador is a stealth strategy. Logic says potion. Personality says, nah, dog form's fine. Why the Ministry never used Veritaserum. Veritaserum is a powerful truth potion that forces the drinker to answer questions honestly. The Ministry of Magic owns it, regulates it, and, apparently, completely forgets it exists during every major trial. After the First Wizarding War, Death Eaters escaped justice by claiming they were under the Imperius Curse. Sirius Black, on the other hand, was imprisoned without trial while literally laughing in shock. If the Ministry had used Veritaserum, they could have sorted the guilty from the innocent in minutes. Instead, they relied on vibes and hysteria. Even during Harry's underage magic hearing, where the truth potion could have cleared him instantly, they didn't use it, probably because it would have ruined Fudge's agenda. The result? A justice system so broken it makes Azkaban look organized. Why Harry didn't just disguise himself during the 7 Potters. To move Harry safely from Privet Drive, the Order brewed Polyjuice Potion so 6 volunteers could impersonate him, while the real Harry flew alongside them. Their logic? The Death Eaters won't know which Harry to attack. The flaw? They now have 7 targets instead of 1. A simpler plan would have been for Harry to take Polyjuice Potion himself, disguise as a random Muggle, and quietly leave in a car or train. The Death Eaters couldn't trace him because the Ministry was already compromised. But instead, they went with an airborne parade of Harry clones that immediately got people killed. Strategic brilliance at its peak, if your goal was maximum chaos and bird casualties. The Polyjuice Potion voice problem. In the books, Polyjuice Potion changes both appearance and voice. Harry and Ron, when transformed into Crabbe and Goyle, sound like Crabbe and Goyle. Simple enough. But the films didn't get the memo. In Chamber of Secrets, they keep their own voices because apparently magic stops at the vocal cords. Then, in Goblet of Fire, Barty Crouch Jr. impersonates Mad-Eye Moody with a perfectly matching voice. Later, Deathly Hallows. Part 1 reverts to the book Logic, with the disguised trio keeping their real voices again. So, depending on the movie, Polyjuice Potion either rewrites your DNA or politely skips your throat. It's not a lore issue, it's a filmmaking one, but it creates one of the most inconsistent magical effects in the entire franchise. Why no one used Felix Felicis in the Battle of Hogwarts? Felix Felicis, Liquid Luck, is the potion that makes everything go your way. Harry uses it in Half-Blood Prince to extract Slughorn's Horcrux memory, and the results are flawless. Naturally, you'd think Hogwarts would stockpile gallons of the stuff before the final battle. They didn't. Apparently no one thought of handing out luck shots before facing an army of dark wizards and giant snakes. The brewing time is 6 months, yes, but that's hardly an excuse for a war that's been coming for over a year. Either the defenders forgot the most overpowered potion ever made, or Slughorn spent the entire siege conveniently out of ingredients. For a world obsessed with preparing for every eventuality, they really didn't prepare for this one. How Harry could safely hold the Sword of Gryffindor. The Sword of Gryffindor absorbs what makes it stronger, like Basilisk Venom. It's the key to destroying Horcruxes because it's soaked with one of the deadliest substances known to magic. Yet Harry handles it with his bare hands multiple times and suffers 0 side effects. Basilisk Venom is lethal on contact with the bloodstream, but apparently harmless if smeared on a sword hilt. The venom can melt a Horcrux but can't irritate skin. Convenient. Unless the sword is also self-cleaning, the lack of reaction is a neat contradiction. Toxic enough to destroy fragments of souls, but not toxic enough to cause a paper-cut problem. The Time Turner paradox in Cursed Child. Time Turners were once governed by strict magical laws. In Prisoner of Azkaban, Hermione's device could only move her a few hours backward. Dumbledore explicitly warned that even short jumps could have catastrophic side effects if misused. Later, all known time turners were destroyed during the battle at the Department of Mysteries, ending time travel altogether. That was the rule. Then Cursed Child came along and threw the rulebook straight out of the pensieve. Suddenly, a new prototype time turner appears that allows travel not just hours, but decades into the past, creating alternate timelines where history itself changes. The boys alter Cedric's fate, Voldemort survives, and reality resets multiple times, none of which fits the closed-loop logic that governed time travel in the books. The original series made it clear, time cannot be changed, only fulfilled. Yet the play treats time like a toy box with unlimited retrees. It's one of the most quietly devastating continuity breaks in the entire canon, turning Rowling's tightly bound timeline magic into a full-blown butterfly effect simulator. The implausible birth of Delphi. According to Cursed Child, Voldemort and Bellatrix Lestrange secretly had a daughter, Delphi, born shortly before the Battle of Hogwarts. The problem? Bellatrix was actively dueling, torturing, and terrorizing people throughout that same year. She tortured Hermione at Malfoy Manor, fought in the Battle of the Seven Potters, and never once acted even slightly pregnant. The timeline gives her maybe 9 months to carry and deliver a child without anyone, not even the Malfoys she lived with, noticing. It also demands that Voldemort, a man who viewed love and family as weaknesses, paused his war to start one. Nothing in the books, letters, or lore ever suggests such a thing could happen. Even in the play, characters react with disbelief because it makes no internal sense. For the story to hold, we'd have to assume an off-screen pregnancy, an unseen birth, and a collective case of wizarding amnesia. In short, the idea of Delphi's birth doesn't just stretch canon, it snaps it. Why the Basilisk Fang didn't destroy the Horcrux inside Harry. In Chamber of Secrets, Harry is stabbed by a Basilisk Fang. The venom should destroy any Horcrux it touches, confirmed later when the trio uses those same fangs to obliterate several of them. Yet, Harry's internal Horcrux survives. Fawkes's tears cure the poison, but they shouldn't undestroy a Horcrux once it's damaged. The logical outcome is that the Horcrux should have died when Harry was bitten. Rowling never explains this, though fan theories abound. Some say Harry had to fully die for the Horcrux to perish. Others argue Fawkes's healing tears repaired the host, but not the fragment. Whatever the case, the rules of Horcrux destruction shift here faster than Snape's mood. How Ron and Hermione escape the Chamber of Secrets. In Deathly Hallows, Ron and Hermione return to the Chamber of Secrets to destroy Hufflepuff's cup using a Basilisk Fang. They get in easily enough. Ron mimics Harry's parcel tongue, and the door opens. The problem comes afterward. How did they get out? In Chamber of Secrets, Fawkes the Phoenix had to carry everyone up that massive vertical tunnel. By the time of the final book, Fawkes is long gone and no rope or ladder is mentioned. There's no spell for levitate us to the surface in the text either. Unless broomsticks spontaneously appeared down there, this is a pure narrative skip. Apparently, Rowling decided that logistics don't apply when romance is involved. One kiss and gravity politely stops existing. How Fred and George learned the Marauder's map password. When the twins hand Harry the Marauder's map, they already know the activation phrase. I solemnly swear that I am up to no good. But the map doesn't come with instructions, and its creators are long gone. Rowling later explained that the map recognized mischief and gave the boys hints until they guessed correctly. A magical interface tutorial, essentially. It's a neat patch, but it came after fans asked the question. In the books, there's no clue how two teenage pranksters cracked a security spell designed by 4 of the most talented students Hogwarts ever saw. Either the Weasley twins are geniuses, or the map's password protection was about as strong as a Hufflepuff lock. Why Voldemort never made his Death Eaters take the Unbreakable Vow. The Unbreakable Vow forces anyone who breaks it to die instantly. Voldemort, paranoid and power-hungry, could have used it to guarantee loyalty. He didn't. Instead, he relied on fear, torture, and the occasional murder to keep his army obedient. Given that betrayal nearly kills him multiple times, you'd think magical contracts might help. But Voldemort's ego doesn't allow him to believe anyone could betray him. He's convinced that fear alone will do the job. The irony is that it doesn't. Snape literally becomes a double agent under his nose. The Dark Lord could have weaponized binding magic, but instead trusted office politics, a managerial oversight that cost him everything. How the Azkaban escapees got their wands back. When witches and wizards are sentenced to Azkaban, their wands are snapped, destroyed beyond use. Yet when Bellatrix Lestrange and the other Death Eaters break out, they immediately start firing spells like they'd just left Ollivanders. There's no scene of them getting replacements and no explanation of how they found wands compatible with them again. In Harry Potter lore, a wand chooses the wizard, and using someone else's wand weakens the spell work. So either they all got very lucky at a secondhand wand shop, or the Ministry stored snapped wands in a drawer labeled just in case mass breakout. Neither option makes much sense, and it quietly undercuts the whole wand loyalty concept. How Hagrid flew to the hut on the rock. In Philosopher's Stone, Hagrid tells the Dursleys he flew to the island where Harry was hiding. The only problem? He can't. Brooms collapse under his weight. His words, not ours. And Sirius's motorbike isn't seen anywhere nearby. The Dursleys took the only boat to the island, so unless Hagrid arrived by swimming through a storm with an owl under one arm, we're missing a transport method. The most generous theory suggests a Thestral carried him, invisible to Harry's eyes. But since Thestrals weren't introduced until Book 5, it feels like another case of early series improvisation. He flew is probably shorthand for don't ask, just accept the magic. Why Dumbledore's portrait can give intelligent advice. Rowling later clarified that portraits are not the full souls of the dead, just enchanted echoes imitating their subjects' personalities. They don't learn or think independently. So how does Dumbledore's painting in Half-Blood Prince give Snape complex instructions, react to new events, and offer genuine wisdom? The standard portrait enchantment shouldn't allow that level of awareness. Rowling retroactively explained that Dumbledore had the portrait painted a year before his death, and trained it by visiting daily, feeding it knowledge and personality traits. Convenient but unconvincing. A painted canvas shouldn't suddenly function like a magical backup drive for your consciousness. Apparently, death is only temporary if you've sat for a really good artist. Why Hogwarts never performed background checks. Hogwarts, the most prestigious magical school in Britain, apparently operates on a trust first, ask later hiring policy. Over the years, they've employed a Voldemort host, a Death Eater impersonating another teacher, and a celebrity conman who couldn't perform a single real spell. No one noticed. Professor Quirrell came back from traveling abroad with Voldemort literally attached to his skull, and Dumbledore just said, "Welcome back." Mad-Eye Moody? Actually Barty Crouch Jr. under Polyjuice Potion. Still no vetting process. And Gilderoy Lockhart? His resume was basically self-published fan fiction. The Ministry can monitor underage wizards, but not verify staff at a government-funded school. It's less magical education and more a case study in negligent recruitment. McGonagall's impossible timeline. Canon sources say Minerva McGonagall was born in 1935. That's fine, until the Fantastic Beasts films place her teaching at Hogwarts during the 1920s, a full decade before she existed. She even appears in flashbacks to 1910. This isn't creative license, it's mathematical chaos. Rowling tried to brush it off by saying timelines are flexible, but unless McGonagall mastered time travel before birth, it's simply a continuity error. Fans have tried to patch it with theories about an older relative sharing her name, but the film credits explicitly call her Minerva. In short, either McGonagall is immortal or Warner Brothers didn't check the wiki. The Wizarding Education Problem. Between ages 11 and 17, students attend Hogwarts. Before that, no official schooling. After that, no Wizarding University. Magical children are somehow expected to learn reading, writing, and math before age 11, usually taught by parents, many of whom work full-time. That's assuming their parents are literate. Muggleborns at least attend normal schools first, giving them a serious head start. Then, at 17, they graduate and immediately apply to the Ministry, because apparently higher education is for Muggles. The entire system relies on home tutoring, zero oversight, and a castle that tries to kill its pupils yearly. It's less an education model and more an endurance test. The Portkey Problem. Portkeys are objects enchanted to instantly transport anyone touching them from one place to another. Simple enough until the series gives them completely inconsistent rules. In Goblet of Fire, the boot that takes Harry and the Weasleys to the Quidditch World Cup works only for a few seconds, one way and on a timer. Later, the Triwizard Cup is turned into a Portkey that not only activates immediately, but also brings Harry back to Hogwarts after Voldemort's resurrection. So, are Portkeys timed, single-use, bidirectional, or just whatever the plot needs that day? Rowling never defines the system, leaving Portkeys as magical Swiss Army knives, convenient, flexible, and logically incoherent. The Triwizard Tournament Spectator Issue. The Triwizard Tournament was billed as the ultimate magical sporting event, yet only one of its 3 tasks could actually be watched. The first task, Dragons in an Arena, makes sense. The second takes place underwater, where the audience sees nothing but bubbles, and the third is in a hedge maze that blocks all visibility. Thousands of people show up just to stare at a lake or a wall of shrubbery. The only way this could be entertaining is if Ludo Bagman was giving live commentary through magical surveillance, something the books never confirm. Either the spectators had omniscient viewing spells, or they paid for the least eventful show since Quidditch Halftime. The Sorting Hat System. At age 11, children are sorted into 4 rigid categories that define their identity for life. Brave, Gryffindor, Clever, Ravenclaw, Ambitious, Slytherin, Loyal, Hufflepuff. The problem is that people aren't one-dimensional, and the system ensures they never get the chance to find out. It tells kids who they are before they've even hit puberty. Worse, half the school believes one house is basically evil. The result? A self-fulfilling prophecy of prejudice, rivalry, and yearly murder attempts. The Sorting Hat calls itself impartial, but let's be honest, it's been mentally profiling minors for centuries with the accuracy of a BuzzFeed quiz. The Alohomora Oversight during Sirius Black's escape. When Sirius escapes Azkaban and sneaks into Hogwarts, the school goes into lockdown. Corridors are sealed, portraits are alert, and Dementors patrol the grounds. Yet not a single professor remembers that Alohomora, the unlocking charm taught to first years, exists. Hermione mastered it before she even took exams. Sirius, an accomplished wizard, would have no trouble opening locked doors, unless the professors enchanted every lock to resist every unlocking spell, which is never stated. This was magical security theater, the kind that looks impressive but can be undone by a student with basic spell knowledge. Hogwarts, where even the emergency plans need emergency plans. Ron's hand-me-down wand. Wands choose their wizards, reacting to personal compatibility and magical alignment. So when Ron inherits his brother Charlie's old wand, it shouldn't work properly, and it doesn't. But the real question is, why would the Weasleys do this at all? A mismatched wand can hinder spellcasting, and they know this. The books use the hand-me-down wand to show the family's poverty, but in practical terms, it makes no sense. Charlie could have kept his wand for sentimental reasons, or the family could have asked Dumbledore for help acquiring a proper one. Instead, Ron starts his Hogwarts journey with malfunctioning magical equipment, like showing up to school with a broken laptop because it builds character. Dennis Creevey and Hogsmeade too early. Hogsmeade visits are restricted to students in their third year or older. Yet, in Order of the Phoenix, Dennis Creevey, a second year, attends the first Dumbledore's army meeting in the Hogshead Inn. The book doesn't explain how he got there. There's no secret passage, no permission slip, and no invisibility cloak in sight. Dennis simply appears, as if the rules took a day off. Either Rowling forgot his age, or he's the most talented escape artist Hogwarts ever produced. In any case, it's a clear timeline error, and one that makes Professor McGonagall's strict supervision policy look more like a polite suggestion. Why Voldemort didn't retrieve the prophecy himself? In Order of the Phoenix, Voldemort manipulates Harry into entering the Department of Mysteries to collect a prophecy that only those involved can touch. If anyone else handles it, it shatters. Fair enough, except Voldemort is one of the people involved. He could have walked in, grabbed it, and walked out. By the time Harry arrives, Death Eaters already control the room, so there's no reason Voldemort couldn't have done it earlier. The supposed risk was revealing himself, but that concern disappears when he shows up minutes later to duel Dumbledore in front of the entire ministry. In short, the Dark Lord orchestrated an elaborate teenage scavenger hunt for an object he could have collected on his lunch break. The Hogwarts calendar error. Every school year, Hogwarts students board the train on September 1st and begin classes the next morning. Every time, that date conveniently falls on a Monday. Except, of course, it can't. Real-world calendars don't work like that. Across 6 school years, September 2nd lands on every day of the week at least once. But never mind that, because Hogwarts runs on narrative convenience, not lunar cycles. Rowling never assigns firm years to the events, which makes tracking dates impossible. It's a harmless oversight, but one that quietly confirms that wizards probably don't teach arithmetic for a reason. The Troll in the Dungeon Dilemma. In Philosopher's Stone, Quirrell bursts into the Great Hall shouting about a troll in the dungeon. The teachers promptly send students back to their common rooms. Logical, except for the Slytherins, whose dorms are in the dungeons. That means the staff just directed an entire house straight toward the danger. The obvious fix would have been to send them anywhere else. But Rowling hadn't yet established Slytherin's location when writing the first book. Once she placed their common room under the castle in Book 2, the troll incident became a retroactive death trap. It's one of the earliest, simplest, and most undeniable continuity errors in the entire series.